This last section of our unit is on hominid evolution. First, we'll talk about classification. In the kingdom Animalia, there are many common characteristics that put organisms into this classification category. All animals are multicellular, heterotrophic, sexually reproducing, without cell walls, capable of motion at some stage in life, and respond to stimuli. All animals have those characteristics. Animals can be subdivided into the next grouping, which is called a phylum. And the phylum would be vertebrate. And all vertebrates have, at some stage of development, a cartilaginous skeletal rod supporting the body, a central nervous system, and gill slits. Humans would fit into this because our skeleton starts as a cartilaginous skeletal rod. We have a nervous system, and during embryo development, we have gill slits, which eventually go away. Humans are then subdivided into the next group, which is the mammal group. All mammals have hair or fur, sweat glands, mammary or milk glands. They take care of their young, they're warm-blooded, and they have a four-chambered heart. There are 20 different subgroups of mammals, which you can see on this slide. The subgroup of mammal that we belong to is the order of primates. Primates are a very diverse group, and you can see on this slide that primates include things like lemurs, gorillas, orangutans, baboons, tarsiers, chimps, and us. All primates share certain characteristics. They all have grasping hands and feet, a rotating shoulder joint, a rotating forearm, large cerebral portion of the brain that's responsible for problem solving and critical thinking, a reduction of the sense of smell compared to other mammals, and an enhancement of the sense of vision. So primates rely more on their vision than other traits. And they have forward-facing eyes, which gives them depth perception. That's called binocular vision, or the ability to see in 3D, that you can determine the relative distance of things, what's closer, what's further away. A common misconception when it comes to primate evolution is that humans evolved from apes. That is not accurate. Instead, primates evolved through divergent evolution. So if you remember divergent evolution from the last section, that means that there's a common ancestor that splits into different groups. And so all primates shared a common ancestor and then diverged into all the different groups of primates. So all the primates have a common ancestor, but they've all been evolving and changing over time to their current forms. So we did not evolve from modern apes. Rather, we share a common ancestor with modern apes. Just like you did not descend from your cousins, but you share a common ancestor with them. That's a very good analogy. All primates are believed to have shared a common ancestor approximately 65 million years ago. And that's when the divergence would have first started. Ape lineages would have diverged about 16 million years ago, and the human chimp divergence is about 6 million years ago. And remember, the more recent the divergence, the more closely related those organisms are. Biochemical studies show that humans are most closely related to chimps. So, of all of the primates, chimps and humans are the most closely related. When we do biochemical studies, like examining DNA, proteins, amino acids, there's a 98 to 99% identical biochemical similarity between between humans and chimps. If we compare human and chimp chromosomes, all apes have 48 chromosomes, like chimps have 48 chromosomes. Chromosome bands between human and chimpanzee are 99% the same. So when we look at the actual gene placement, they're 99% the same. There's the translocation of two ape chromosomes that ended up forming the human chromosome number 2. So our human chromosome number 2 actually is basically two of those chimp chromosomes that fused together. Among primates, humans are most closely related to chimps from a common ancestor approximately 6 million years ago. However, chimps are more closely related to bonobos, and they had a common ancestor about 1 million years ago. LCA stands for Last Common Ancestor of humans and chimps. Much is unknown about this last common ancestor. What is known is that it would have originated in Africa and then migrated to other locations. Hominids are the human-like primates that diverged from chimps. So these would be ancestors of modern humans. And we can look at what hominids have in terms of characteristics compared to other primates like you see in that table. For hominids, there's a skull atop an S-shaped spine, and that's because we walk on two legs, where other primates have their skull atop a C-shaped spine, and that's because they are walking on all fours. For hominids, the spinal cord exits at the bottom of the skull, once again, because we walk on two legs. And for other primates, the spinal cord exits near the back of the skull, more horizontally because they're walking on all fours. For hominids, the arms are shorter than the legs. The hands don't touch the ground during walking, where other primates, their arms are longer than their legs, and the hands do touch the ground during walking because they're walking on all fours. Pelvis shape is different. Hominids have a bowl-shaped pelvis, while other primates have a more long and narrow pelvis. And hominids have thigh bones that are angled inward directly below the body, and other primates have thigh bones angled away from the pelvis. So the main characteristics of hominids are they have a much larger cerebrum than other primates. And that allows for much more complicated decision making and problem solving. And the other main characteristic, like the table suggests, is that hominids are bipedal, which means they walk on two legs. And that was a huge evolutionary development because it freed the hands for other tasks. The type of evolution that hominids are believed to show is called mosaic evolution. And that means different parts evolved at different rates or at different times. So it's not like all of these characteristics that make hominids unique from the other primates developed all at once. Instead, it's believed that bipedality, or the ability to walk on two legs, came long before brain enlargement. In terms of the hominid groups, there have been 20 different species of hominids that have been identified. Some are direct ancestors of us, modern humans, and some are extinct relatives. And it's important to understand that hominid evolution is extremely complex and not fully understood. Scientists are piecing together the information the best they can with the fossil evidence that have been found. And with more and more fossils being found all the time, it is adding to the knowledge base and giving us a better understanding of how this would have occurred. What's really interesting to understand is that human beings have only been on Earth for a tiny fraction of all of Earth's history. So we're going to go through the different main groups of hominids that we know a lot of information about. So first, we'll start with Australopithecus afarensis. This is one of the longest lived hominid species. It survived about 900,000 years. That means it was in existence 4 times longer than our current species of modern humans. It's been dated at approximately 3.5 million years. It had a very small stature. It was approximately only 4 feet tall and weighed approximately 80 pounds. It had a very small brain, about a third of the size of our current brain size. It was bipedal, and it had small canine teeth. And that indicates it probably ate a lot of plant material because canines are for ripping flesh and meat. And when we look at Australopithecus, it has many more similarities with humans than other primates. Sometimes Australopithecus is referred to as Lucy, and that's because Lucy was the name given to the first skeleton of the species that was discovered in 1974. This original fossil was about 40% intact of the skeleton, and since then, more fossils of species Australopithecus have been found. This video is really interesting that shows how modern humans walk compared to how chimpanzees and Australopithecus or Lucy would have walked. So make sure that you watch that really short video clip. So now moving on, after Australopithecus, we see hominids who belong to the genus Homo. And so the first one in this genus would be Homo habilis. And this species is dated at about 2 million years ago. Habilis means handyman, and they named it this because this species is thought to have been the first tool makers. When comparing Homo habilis to Australopithecus, Homo habilis has a much larger brain case, meaning its cranium is larger, so it would have been able to support a larger brain. It had a smaller face and smaller teeth. The next species to arise was Homo erectus. Sometimes this is referred to as Homo ergaster. This was dated at about 1.5 million years ago. And this is the first species to believe to have moved or expanded its range out of Africa. Its main characteristics is that it had modern human-like body proportions. So it had much longer legs and much shorter arms than previous species. There's evidence that it cared for its old and weak individuals. So it was showing a lot more um, social characteristics and more innovation in tool technology. So more advanced tools. Next, we have Homo neanderthalensis, and this was dated about 500,000 to 50,000 years ago. This is believed to be our closest extinct human relative. There's much evidence that they lived in social groups. Characteristics, they had many adaptations for cold environments. They were short and stocky, which allowed them to have more fat deposits and keep themselves warmer that way. They had a huge nose for warming and humidifying the air because in colder environments, the air is very cold and dry. And so it often needs to be warmed and humidified before it reaches the lungs. They made and used sophisticated tools. They controlled fire. They made and wore clothing. They lived in shelters, which they made rather than like caves. They were skilled hunters, And they had sophisticated and symbolic behaviors that weren't seen in earlier human species. For example, they made ornamental objects. So they made objects that weren't necessarily needed, but things that were aesthetically pleasing. They buried their dead and they marked graves with offerings and flowers. And so then that leads to us, current modern humans. This is the Homo sapiens species. So we have been around approximately 300,000 years. Our characteristics are that we have much lighter skeletons. We have the largest brain that involved extreme changes in skull anatomy for this huge cranial area. And we have a less developed jaw with smaller teeth. And that indicates that we, in addition to eating plant material, we're eating a lot more meat or animal material as well.